and companies like Hindustan Zinc Limited, Balco, such companies.
But you do need to amend the Mining Act for at least Hindustan Zinc to go through.
We'll take whatever measures are necessary to fructify that disinvestment.
There are different opinions on that. I think the Supreme Court has also clarified in one case, and therefore this matter is now before the Law Ministry, that the law need not be amended. So so we do believe that resolution to that would be found in the coming year.
Okay.
And therefore the legal question will be settled. The financial question as to how it should be priced, etc., is something which we will look at.
Okay.
And some acceptable formula would be found.
Mr. Thakur, the all-women's bank seems to have caught the fancy of the country at this point in time, and that hopefully will be inaugurated in October, as the finance minister said. But what about the bank licenses? The final date for the applications is the 1st of July. How soon do you actually see us moving on that front?
I don't think the new licenses were part of the budget speech, but in any case, that's a current issue, so I can clarify that. The 1st of July is the last date for applying, and after that, with due diligence and so on, as we expect the RBI to be doing, we expect, with a bit of luck, to see a few banks in place by the end of the financial year, the next one.
By the end of the next financial year. And when you say a few, would that number be 4, 5? What would be a desirable number to your mind?
According to the media, it's between 4 and 5.
What is it according to you?
We have no preconceived notions in the matter.
What would you like to see, though? What do you think is desirable?
No, let me clarify this and put it in perspective. The question is not of how many banks we see. The question is, these banks are coming for a purpose. Now, the purpose is, as I think I clarified earlier, is that we are a hugely unbanked and underbanked country. We have approximately 6.3 banks per 1 lakh population, as per the World Bank, and we fall in the 37th percentile in terms of bank reach. Now, these are also heavily skewed towards urban areas and so on. So now with this condition of 25% going to priority areas, I think there is a huge scope here for people to come in, and let's see what kind of call the Reserve Bank takes.
Okay. Mr. Bose, as far as tax collections go, on the corporate tax front, we actually saw a shortfall of about 14 or little over 14,000 crore rupees. There was also a shortfall in tax revenues between the BE and the RE. You're still hoping for a 19% increase as far as tax revenues are concerned. The finance minister is confident that we've done 16 and we'll be able to get to 19. Do you believe that is the case?
Yes, certainly. Also, what are the other differences? We are looking at 18,000 crores of ARM. So we get that next year. We also get a larger growth. The nominal GDP is going to be 13.4 as opposed to 11.7. That's the base for the current year. So with that, I think we are optimistic. And with all these use of technology, 2 weeks ago we sent out 35,000 letters to people who had done all sorts of transactions using their credit cards, bank accounts, but had not filed returns. We're going to send out another 35,000 letters soon. Hopefully all these persons will come into the tax net.
So this amnesty, okay, let's not call it the amnesty scheme, but the scheme that has been announced as far as the service tax is concerned, how much do you intend or hope to actually garner by way of that?
It's difficult to put a number to that, but it's going to be on a recurring basis. Obviously going to be a one-time gain when they come in and 2 installments pay whatever is their truthful declaration. But more important, on an ongoing basis, they'll then be in the tax net, and hopefully more disciplined than what they have been so far. And so year after year thereafter they will pay, and hopefully as growth picks up, services sector does well, all these individuals will do well and pay their taxes.
Very quickly, 2 quick questions. Of the 13,300 crore rupees that you hope to mop up through the direct taxes front, the surcharge on the super rich, how much would that account for? And also the hike in royalty rate, to correct the anomaly between the DTA rate and the income tax rate. Do you believe that the effective increase for most companies would be in the range of about 5%?
Yes, I think it will be that, but it will be whatever is the DTA rate. So it will depend on country to country. And as I explained, the bulk of it will be from the surcharge. It's difficult to put a number to it exactly, but will be from the surcharge.
Okay. Everyone is hoping that things are going to turn around, Mr. Mairam, that we are actually going to see a buoyancy as far as the economy is concerned, but nobody seems to be quite convinced that the levers that have been articulated, at least in this budget, are going to be able to do enough of that.
Well, I would say that there was skepticism when 5.3 was announced for fiscal deficit.
You did
Nobody
5.2?
believed it. We have done 5.2. So if we say that we are going to do it, I am quite assured that as time goes by, you would see that the intention is put into action, and you will see that growth will come back. I am quite confident that we would be able to deliver what we are promising.
Raghuram Rajan, rating agencies, do you believe the threat of what rating agencies may do, has that been put back
I think so.
on the basis of what you've announced today?
I would suspect so. I mean, we've moved far way in the right direction. But also I think when you think about growth, I mean, we've got accustomed to big announcements of big ticket actions by the government. But in some sense, we are talking to a mature economy now, an economy which can generate its own actions so long as you don't suppress it through some big tax hike. One of the things people should be very, very comfortable with is the government didn't start a big new project financed by a big new tax hike. We were moderate, attempting to create the conditions for growth in which the economy itself produces the growth without relying on the government. Lots of small projects the government has announced which will help. But it's not created another big ticket item which will have to be financed because we don't have the money, and we think it's better to let the economy grow right now without suppressing it with additional taxes.
What needs to be seen is that there is a lot of impetus for private sector investment to come back.
Yeah.
And therefore what we would see is a growth which is quite led by private sector investment come back.
My final question, current account deficit, that seems to be the big worry. You've been able to address the fiscal deficit, and we had this conversation yesterday as well. I just spoke with the Commerce Minister. The Finance Minister alluded to putting their heads together to address this issue. The biggest concern that you're all faced with at this point?
Yes, I agree. Fiscal deficit, you can tackle it by trying to increase revenue to whatever limited extent, but then compress expenditure whenever required and to the extent required. Current account deficit, as Finance Minister also said, there are certain things beyond our control. We can talk about financing of the current account deficit, but then to ensure current account deficit being within a manageable level, you have to only increase your exports. So to that extent, efforts are going to be made, discussions would be there at officer level, and then wait for the foreign trade policy. And whatever support is required from the Finance Ministry would be there for that.
All right, gentlemen, we are going to have to leave you. I know you have a busy schedule, but thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. I hope you get a good night's rest tonight, finally, after burning the midnight oil for several days. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. That's the budget team. On that note, a quick commercial break, headlines, and our political guests return when we're back.
अपनी गाड़ी में पिकनिक। थैंक्स पापा।
ये स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया कार लोन्स का कमाल है, सिर्फ 1683 पर लाख के EMI।
That's so affordable। नहीं तो पहले buying a car was so expensive ना।
For affordable car loans, visit your SBI branch today।
हरे भरे खेतों में बोए जा रहे हैं नए सपने, स्कूलों में सिखाया जा रहा है सुनहरे कल का पाठ, और कारखानों में हर दिन पूरा हो रहा है तरक्की से किया वादा। छत्तीसगढ़ में हो रहे विकास और आने वाले मौकों पर CNBC आवाज की एक खास पेशकश। अम्रपाली ग्रुप प्रेजेंट्स छत्तीसगढ़ राइजिंग, सिर्फ CNBC आवाज पर।
Presented by Amrapali Group, developing India.
आप यहाँ आए किस लिए?
आपने बुलाया इसलिए।
आए हैं तो काम भी बताइए।
पहले जरा आप मुस्कुराइए।
भारतीय एक्सा ने बदला है सुरक्षा का नजरिया अपनी डेडिकेटेड क्लेम्स हैंडलर से।
अब आपके क्लेम सेटलमेंट प्रोसेस को सरल बनाने में हम आपकी सहायता करेंगे।
तभी तो एक्सा दुनिया के बेहतरीन इंश्योरेंस कंपनियों में से एक है। भारतीय एक्सा, सुरक्षा का नया नजरिया।
मेरा टाइम तो अब भी चल रहा है।
तुम रोज और यंग होती हो।
इससे बेटर कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं।
मैं तो दादी से सीखी हूँ।
BC Jeweler, jeweler for generations.
Introducing Corporation Bank's Premium Savings Account, Corp Signature and Corp Super. Experience a host of exclusive and value-added services. Corporation Bank, performing with passion.
A trend on the street goes big online, which triggers your software that crunches the data, which begins production and reroutes distribution, which means you're ready. Some companies have increased online revenue up to 50% with help from smarter commerce. I'm an IBMer. Let's build a smarter planet.
We were very keen to find a platform which recognizes some of the best providers in the healthcare space in India. We believe that it's important for us to recognize some of the best hospitals in the smaller towns, because that's where India lives. We are extremely happy with the progress of this award, and we hope to see it continue to do well and wish for this award to be a resounding success this year.
ICICI Lombard Health Insurance and CNBC TV18 present the India Healthcare Awards 2012, 9th March, Delhi, presided over by Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia.
Presented by ICICI Lombard Health Insurance.
ये है उभरता हुआ भारत, इसकी गारंटी कौन लेता है? हजारों गाड़ियों का वजन, सुरक्षा की गारंटी।
JK Lakshmi Cement, Mazbuti guaranteed.
Confident. Put your hands together.
India's biggest stage for business quizzing is ready. Tata Crucible Campus Quiz 2013. 3 countries, 30 cities, 3,000 plus teams, where ports will surpass the speed of light.
No one wants a -10.
The most intelligent form of entertainment is coming soon to your city. Are you ready for the challenge? A knowledge initiative by Tata.
I will steal your sleep. I will make you weep. I will eat your time. I will make you mine. I am obsessive, compulsive, addictive, seductive. I will own you and tear you and squeeze you and wear you. I am your dream. I bring you joy and glory, and I revolutionize. I am your dream, and I ask you to rise. CNBC TV18. Hello, dreamers.
Raindrops Basmati Rice, finest packaged rice.
Welcome back. You're watching our continuing coverage here on CNBC TV18 to talk about the politics of the budget. Rajya Sabha member N.K. Singh, also with us from the BJD, Jay Panda, Piyush Goyal, spokesperson and national treasurer for the BJP, and Derek O'Brien of the TMC. Also with me here in the studio, the chairman of the CBEC and the joint secretary of the TRU, and Mukesh Bhutani. We'll come to them in just a bit, but let me get the political panel going first. N.K. Singh, you know, your thoughts on the budget, because given the circumstances, given the constraints that he was faced with, he didn't do anything flashy, he didn't do anything populist. He presented what some would say is a practical, realistic budget.
Well, I think that the finance minister had committed himself to give a responsible budget, and he has lived up to that statement. I believe that given the challenges which he had, the foremost being restoration of the macroeconomic stability and the credibility necessary not only in terms of international investors, rating agencies, but to rekindle the forces of growth, he has first and foremost restored the macroeconomic credibility by ensuring that the fiscal deficit is brought under control. Second, I think on the current account deficit, he has given enough hints because they are not dependent necessarily on levers with him, except in terms of enticing inward capital flows, which both of FII and FDI, which will enable the bridging of the current account deficit pending the rekindling of exports after revival of export markets. First and lastly, I think that he has addressed the international investor community in terms of ensuring that the fallout of some of the deleterious changes last year have been substantially put at rest. The doubts, I think, have been put to further rest by the constitution of a committee which is supposed to go into all this. Looking at everything, he has delivered on 5.1, and looking forward, a growth rate somewhere between 6.1 to 6.7 is something to which we can look forward to. However, having said this, let me add that he has addressed issues which are under his control. He cannot and has not addressed issues which are not in his control. Most important being that the issue of legislations on both DTC and GST is not in his control, but he wants to do it depending on parliamentary approval. He hopes to enact the insurance and the pension bill, not in his control, but he hopes to do it. There are other factors which are embedded here that he will stick on to the course on capping of subsidies on and all that, not in his control, but enough hints. So I think on the whole, I would say it is an honest and a credible attempt to address the issues that are really hurting growth. He has preferred growth over fiscal rectitude. He has preferred the growth over really only exclusively inflation management. And I think that, therefore, I remain cautiously optimistic that this is a step forward in terms of reviving the forces of economic growth in this country.
All right, so honest, credible budget, a budget that has favored growth over fiscal rectitude, but a budget that has been able to deliver on the promise of fiscal consolidation. That's the word coming in from NK Singh, a thumbs up. Derek O'Brien, how would you rate this budget? And as far as the tax or the surcharge on the super rich are concerned, I would imagine that's music to your ears, unless you're one of them.
See, the first thing is I can't certainly match the eloquence or the financial macro picture view which Mr. NK Singh so eloquently put forward with his tremendous experience. But our view on this budget, before we come to the yachts and the cars, which may or may not be music to my ears, I don't own an SUV, nor do I own a yacht, but this is a classic election budget, and most election budgets are budgets of sweet nothings. You make promises. The intention is not to keep these promises. Since you started off with these SUVs and cars,
on what basis would you say that?
If the
on
feeling
what basis
is that
would you say that, and what are the promises that you think he's not likely to keep, Derek O'Brien?
I'll give you the first one with a number. If they're really serious on this food security bill, look how much has been allotted for that. 10,000 crores. I mean, is he really serious about the food security bill? If you look at the numbers and you divide the 10,000 crores by the number of people who are going to get it, what figure will you come up with? I'm not too sure of that. That's a few.
No, that's the additional provision.
If they were so serious about. Yes, I've seen that. And since you mentioned about SUVs and yachts, see who owns these SUVs and who owns these yachts. This is the very rich. We are disappointed that there was the underbelly of this is the black money. There was no address, nothing on this budget was addressed about how to recover large sums of black money. So I think these are the big issues, and I don't entirely. I think the basis of this the budget, he's made an assumption. Mr. NK Singh, my friend, is optimistic about his assumption. I'm not so optimistic about the assumption. The optimism is that there will be growth, and if there's growth, there'll be more revenue. That we question that basic assumption. We also have some other very major issues.
All right.
When we were looking
I'll come back to you. Derek. Let me just very quickly get in Jay Panda and Piyush Goyal as well. Jay Panda, honest and credible is the word coming in from NK Singh. An election budget is the word coming in from Derek O'Brien. What's your take?
Shireen, if you listen to the majority of the commentators throughout the day after the budget was presented, you get a sense that most of them had been bracing for something far worse, and they seem to be hugely relieved that it is not as bad as they were worrying. The thing is, we all recognize that the economy is in a mess. It's taken several years to get to this point, and the FM was within tremendous constraints to try and pull off a safe budget that doesn't drop the ball. So there are a couple of good measures. Although, for instance, Mr. Singh was saying that the GST is not within his ambit, the fact that he has put aside 9,000 crores for it, and the fact that he is committed to support the legal changes, the constitutional changes necessary to reimburse the states for their, if they have any revenue loss, I think is a good sign. I think this is 2 years overdue. This is something we've been asking for from the states. GST could have been a done deal a long time ago if this had been done 1 or 2 years earlier. So there are some good measures. But Derek is very right.
I want to interrupt you there. I want to interrupt you there. I'll come back to you on the GST, but let me very quickly go to Piyush Goyal. Piyush Goyal, Yashwant Sinha speaking to me just a short while ago said it doesn't matter whether it's provision for 9,000 crore rupees or not. This is going to be an election year. We're not going to see GST being a reality in the tenure of this government. Would you agree?
I suspect he said it because we in the standing committee are waiting for a response from this government for months on end. We haven't got that response. The committee upon committee is deliberating on it. So we really don't know what's the fate of the GST. The network on the side of implementing GST, which was required, the GSTN, has not even been started. They've not even given a contract to develop the software. So I suspect in the next 1 year before the election it will be very difficult to implement. But let me join issue with Mr. N.K. Singh. He's my very senior esteemed colleague. But I don't find this budget at all credible. Every figure in this budget looks suspect. They have not spent 77,000 crores of capital expenditure which was to be done. Non-plan expenditure has gone up. Plan expenditure has gone down. It's a completely haywire budget. And next year's projections also seem suspect. Revenue projection on service tax, for instance, show a 38% growth without an increase in rate or the tax base. Last year with a 20% increase in rate, 10 to 12%, and widening of tax base with a negative list, their growth was only 36%. So on the higher base, how does he expect 38% growth when he has not even told us what the growth is going to be?
You know, Piyush Goyal,
5% last year, we don't know what growth is.
Piyush Goyal, hold that thought. Hold that thought. I'm going to get you an instant clarification on this program. I've got with me the chairman of the CBAC, Piyush Goyal, questioning the budget math, saying that how do you intend to get service tax growth of 38%? Respond to that.
It's actually 35%. It's not 38%. But you see, there are 2-3 measures. One, I think he knows that we have now, a finance minister has announced a scheme which is called a voluntary disclosure scheme.
Right.
Now, we cannot really quantify how much money we are likely to get from there, but this is a scheme which is a very positive step in this direction, because out of about 17 lakh odd registrants, only about 7 lakh currently are paying service tax. And that itself has given us a growth of about 37%.
Okay.
That's one. Secondly, we have recently introduced the negative list of services, which is just about 6 months ago. Now, the real impact of negative list of services has not really come into play. So, the base is likely to increase. That's another thing. And also, services grow at a much faster pace than industry.
Right.
So I would say not less than 60 to 70%. So all these measures, coupled with a bit of an ARM, which we have factored in,
okay,
should be able to get us the good 35.8%. Which has been set for us.
Okay, Piyush Goyal, that's the clarification coming in from the CBEC chairman herself as far as your question mark on the growth in service tax was concerned. Yes.
Shireen, this negative list
Go ahead.
9 months ago, it started in July, and there was a 20% rate increase, 10 to 12%, and they still had 36% increase last year. So this explanation of Madam that the net has got wider in the next year is wrong. It had already got wider last year, And secondly, we don't know what the growth is going to be. The nominal growth projected in the budget is still 13.4%. That's the same as last year. Last year we grew 12%. This year we were expecting 13% as per this budget. So there is not really what she's saying, services grow faster. We all know that. They grew faster last year and they've been growing faster for many years. So, madam,
she wants to jump in. She wants to jump in for another clarification. Go ahead. Yeah.
Maybe she didn't give this.
All right, Mr. Garg, go ahead.
I remember when the negative list came last year, and I was being asked that your budget estimates are low, and they should be far higher. And we were maintaining our numbers. So there is something in the last year's number and then this year's number that you got to know before you project the next year's numbers.
Right.
See, if you see 2011-12, we grew roughly 37% and without any tax rate increase. There was no increase. We maintained 10% and we grew 37%. So that's what we thought. There were some one-time measures. Things, for example, there was time of taxation rules.
Right.
There was some rationalization in the Sandwich credit rules. And there was also some amount of, emphasis on compliance.
Okay.
That gave us a phenomenal growth in 2011 and 12. So this year when we say we are growing 35%, you have to first discount the base year effect.
All right.
So if you discount that, this year's effective growth is close to 42, 43 or maybe 45%.
All right, I know Piyush Goyal is going to want to come in and contradict that as well, but let's move away from that discussion. I have very little time left on the show. So let me quickly ask you, Jai Panda, what was your one big highlight and your one big negative as far as this budget was concerned? I'll get wrap-up comments from everybody.
The highlight was his very candid admission about the desperate need for investment, particularly FDI. And he pointed out that tremendous steps will need to be taken to make that investment welcome. As you know, India ranks very low in worldwide terms in terms of ease of doing business, of ease of introducing investment. It takes 1.5 years to get any investment started in India if you're doing FDI. So the problem is those are very noble sentiments, but the proof of the pudding will be actually in the eating in the coming months, because there's nothing he can say or do in the budget that will make it so. It will require the entire government to function properly for that to happen. And as far as negative, I wouldn't exactly call it a negative. He was under the pressure of sustaining the fisc. And as Derek was saying, he's been playing with smoke and mirrors. They've made announcements in several areas which are actually not going to get backed up. For example, almost every allocation, if you adjust for inflation, sees no change from the budgetary estimate of last year. Don't compare to the revised estimate because that was all scaled down.
Okay.
If you compare to the budget estimate of last year and you adjust for inflation, there is virtually no increase on any front. And yet a spin has been given as if it is voter friendly, as if new social spending schemes are being brought out, which is trying to run with hunt with the hounds and run with the hares both.
I'm running out of time. Final word, Derek O'Brien. 10 seconds. Your big highlight and your big negative.
Okay. I think Mr. Chidambaram's 8 years experience, the highlight for him would be even a bad product. He's made a half-decent attempt at packaging a bad product, but our concern is the product is terrible. And I've made earlier points. I don't want to repeat the points, but one thing which will be of concern is the backward region grants, which is very nasty for states like mine and a few others. All this time those grants were being given. Now the state has to match the grant. Now that is doomsday for states with large backward regions. The earlier points I've made, I don't want to repeat myself, but as I said, sweet nothings in an election budget and no intention to keep any of these promises, because and if you look at the figures, if you look at the numbers, if the revised estimates you're saying 10,000 crores additional for food, no, that is more like 4,000 crores, because if you look at the revised budget estimates, the figures itself are 4-5% under.
Yeah. All right. We will quibble about the budget math, and we've got plenty of time to actually do that. NK Singh, 10 seconds, final words from you.
Well, I think that the big positive, I would say that the focus is right on growth, heart in the right place. whether the rest of the body structure will live up to where Mr. Chidambaram's heart is, only time will tell. To Mr. Derek O'Brien, yes, this is the main budget. There is a first supplementary, second supplementary, and third supplementary. And to Piyush, I think he's underrating the importance of the voluntary disclosure on the service tax, and having perhaps his father would have told him of what the voluntary disclosure of 97 did. And I think that looking at India's past experience, there is a huge expectation on the voluntary disclosure stuff on the service tax. So on the whole, I think I stick to what I said.
All right. And
a credible attempt by Mr. Chidambaram.
all right, he's got his heart in the right place. I'm afraid we've completely run out of time. Jay Panda, Piyush Goyal, Derek O'Brien, N.K. Singh, the CBC chairman, Mr. Garg, appreciate you joining us here on this special conversation here on CNBC TV18. We will continue our comprehensive coverage of the budget after this very short break.
Presented by